Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I found them 3 weeks ago, hidden in a desk I bought at an estate sale. The desk belonged to Father Paul Farrell, who died at 76 on March 14, 2019. Natural causes, the obituary said. 43 years serving St. Sebastian's Cathedral in Providence. No surviving family. A quiet life of service, according to the brief notice in the Providence Journal. I'm a medieval history professor at Brown, and I have a weakness for old furniture. The Victorian secretary desk caught my eye at the estate sale. Mahogany, brass fixtures, the kind of piece that holds stories. I paid $240 for it. When I got it home to our row house in Providence, I discovered the bottom right drawer was jammed. My wife Rachel laughed when I spent an hour working it free with a screwdriver. "Another mystery to solve, Professor Bodwin," she said, heading upstairs to grade papers. Behind the stuck drawer was a hidden compartment. Inside was a mahogany box containing 47 typewritten pages, a small leather notebook, and a silver medallion on a tarnished chain. The medallion showed Saint Michael the Archangel standing on a serpent. The back was covered in symbols I didn't recognize. The first page was dated January 14th, 1949. I've been reading them every night since. What follows is what I found. Case documentation, file number 1 compiled by Father Paul Farrell. Date of compilation, March 1963. Original case, January 1949, Mount Rainier, Maryland. Subject, name redacted, church records sealed. Documented by Father Raymond Bishop. S.J. I was not present for this case. I was still in seminary at the time. However, I assisted Father Bishop with his official report to the Archbishop of Washington in 1963, and he shared with me his personal notes, which he asked me to preserve. What follows is Father Bishop's account, in his own words, which I have transcribed from his handwritten journals. Father Bishop's account. The family contacted our rectory on January 15, 1949. Their 13-year-old son, I will call him R throughout this account, had been experiencing phenomena for 3 weeks that they could not explain. It began after the death of his aunt on January 12th. She had been teaching the boy to use a Ouija board, a practice I strongly discourage. 3 days after her funeral, objects in R's bedroom began moving on their own. His parents heard scratching sounds from inside the walls. The boy spoke in his sleep with a voice his mother described as not his own, deeper, older, full of hate. On January 14th, R attacked his father while appearing to be asleep. He picked up a letter opener from the desk and slashed at his father's arm, requiring 8 stitches. The boy had no memory of this when he woke. I arrived with Father William Bodern and Father Walter Halloran. The boy was restrained to his bed, not as punishment, his mother insisted through tears, but because he had tried to harm himself the previous night. When we entered R's bedroom, he appeared to be sleeping. Eyes closed, breathing shallow and irregular. The room was cold, far colder than it should have been. Even with the window closed, I could see my breath. Father Bodern began the preliminary prayers. That's when R opened his eyes. I have been a priest for 23 years. I have seen death, tragedy, the worst of human suffering. But I had never seen eyes like that. The color was still brown, still the boy's eyes in pigment and structure. But what looked out from behind them was ancient, calculating, utterly inhuman. "Raymond," it said. The voice made my stomach turn. It was multiple voices speaking in perfect unison, at least 3 distinct tones layered together, creating a sound that human vocal cords should not be able to produce. Father Raymond Bishop, born April 3rd, 1926, in Boston. Your mother died when you were 7. Pneumonia. You prayed every night for God to save her. He didn't. You've doubted him ever since, even though you wear the collar. I had never told anyone about those childhood prayers, not in confession, not to fellow priests, not even in my private journals. Your brother Thomas drinks, it continued, every night. Your sister Catherine is having an affair with a married man. Your father remarried a woman you despise. Shall I continue? Shall I tell your brothers here about what you did in the war? About the German soldier you killed after he surrendered? About how you dream of his face? Enough, Father Bodern commanded. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to silence. The thing using R laughed. Not the boy's laugh. A sound like grinding metal and breaking glass. Jesus, always Jesus. Do you know what I want, Raymond? I want you to understand something very simple. Innocence doesn't exist. This boy? Not innocent. He invited me in. Wanted to talk to his dead aunt. Wanted power. Wanted to be special. He asked for me. That's a lie, Father Bodern said. The boy is a victim of your deception. Is he? Or is he exactly what every human is? A creature that invites darkness in and then pretends to be surprised when it accepts the invitation. What happened over the next 6 hours, I can barely bring myself to document. The bed levitated. I do not mean it shook or tilted. I mean it rose 3 feet off the ground with the boy still restrained to it, held in the air for nearly 40 seconds, then slammed back down with enough force to crack the wooden floor. R spoke in Latin. Not simple phrases, but complex theological arguments in perfect ecclesiastical Latin, a language he had never studied. He quoted from Vatican documents that were sealed in Rome, documents that a Maryland teenager could not possibly have accessed. The entity knew things about all of us. It described in detail a confession Father Halloran had heard the previous week, something protected by absolute seal that even I didn't know. It revealed that Father Bodern had been struggling with alcoholism, drinking sacramental wine alone in the rectory. It named priests in the Washington Archdiocese who were having affairs, embezzling funds, abusing their positions. But the physical manifestations were what convinced me this was not mental illness. At 3:17 a.m., scratches began appearing on R's chest and abdomen. We watched as invisible fingers carved words into his skin from the inside. Hell, evil, spite. Father Halloran, thinking to document this for the church, had brought a camera. He photographed the boy's chest as the words formed. When we developed the film 2 days later, every photograph showed R's chest completely unmarked. The room was visible, the bed, the boy's face. But where the scratches should have been, the film showed only smooth, unblemished skin. See, the entity said, you can witness, you can know, but you can never prove. That's the beauty of it, Raymond. You'll spend the rest of your life knowing what you saw. And no one will believe you. Witness without proof. Faith without evidence. That's the game. The exorcism ended at dawn. Father Bodern performed the final prayers, and R convulsed violently, then went completely still. When he opened his eyes, they were a child's eyes again, confused, frightened, with no memory of anything that had happened. We told his family he was free. They moved to another state within 2 months. But before the entity departed, it spoke to me one final time. You asked what I want, Raymond. I want you to doubt. Every time you pray, every time you perform a sacrament, every time you tell someone that God loves them, I want you to remember this night. I want you to wonder, if God is real and good and powerful, why did he let me touch this child? Why did he let me into this innocent boy's body? Why does he allow any of this? I don't need to possess you, Raymond. I just need to plant that question in your mind, and you'll carry it for the rest of your life. That's possession enough. R grew up normally, I was told years later. Married, had children, lived an ordinary life with no memory of January 1949. But I remember. Every detail. Every word. And yes, the entity succeeded, I do doubt. Every single day. Every single. Father Farrell's notes, added 1963. Father Bishop shared this account with me when I was newly ordained. He died in 1962, still serving, still doubting, still faithful despite the doubt. He asked me to preserve this record because he believed the church needed to understand. These entities do not seek merely to destroy. They seek to undermine, to erode certainty, to create questions that have no answers. What did this entity want? Not the boy's life. He survived unharmed physically. Not even the boy's soul. By all accounts, R went on to live a good, faithful life. It wanted to damage the faith of the exorcists. And in Father Bishop's case, it succeeded. I have spent the last 14 years investigating similar cases. I am beginning to see a pattern. These entities are not mindless forces of destruction. They are strategic, purposeful, and their true target is not always the possessed. Sometimes, their target is us. I set down the pages and sat in my basement office, trying to process what I just read. This was the Roland Doe case, the famous 1949 exorcism that inspired William Peter Blatty's novel, The Exorcist. I'd read academic analyses of it, seen the film, studied the sanitized church reports. But Father Bishop's account contained details I'd never encountered. The specificity of the entity's knowledge, the photographs that showed nothing, the final statement about doubt as a form of possession. Rachel had asked me that morning if the journals were real or fiction. I'd said I didn't know. I still didn't know. But I knew I had to keep reading. The next document was dated August 15th, 1963, Case Documentation, File Number 8 compiled by Father Paul Farrell. Date of compilation, August 1963. Original case, 1928, Erling, Iowa. Subject, Anna Eklund, pseudonym. Documented by Father Theophilus Riesinger, OFM, Cap. This case occurred before my time, but I have obtained access to Father Riesinger's detailed documentation through the Capuchin archives. What follows is my compilation of the most significant elements of a possession that lasted, in various forms, for more than 40 years. Summary of the Eklund case. Anna Eklund, not her real name, her identity remains protected by the church, first showed signs of possession in 1908, at age 14. The initial manifestations were subtle. Aversion to holy objects, violent reactions to blessed water, speaking briefly in languages she had never studied. But the possession escalated over 20 years, until in 1928, Father Theophilus Riesinger was called to perform a formal exorcism at a Franciscan convent in Erling, Iowa. The exorcism lasted from August 18 to December 23, 1928, over 4 months, with sessions conducted almost daily. What Father Riesinger documented challenges every natural explanation, physical manifestations. Anna's body would contort into positions that medical doctors present confirmed were anatomically impossible. Her spine would curve backward until her head touched her heels, a position that should have snapped her vertebrae. She maintained this posture for up to 20 minutes. She levitated multiple times, witnessed by the Franciscan sisters, the parish priest, and Father Riesinger himself. On one occasion, she rose vertically to the ceiling of the convent room and clung there, face down, for 15 minutes before dropping suddenly back to the bed. She demonstrated strength far beyond her physical capacity. It required 4 grown men to restrain her 90-pound frame during violent episodes. She consumed no food for weeks at a time, yet did not lose weight or show signs of starvation. Linguistic phenomena. Anna spoke fluently in Latin, German, Polish, and what linguists later identified as Ancient Aramaic. She had received minimal education and had never studied any of these languages. During sessions, she would speak in multiple voices simultaneously. Witnesses described hearing 3 to 5 distinct voices coming from her throat at the same time, each having separate conversations. Knowledge of hidden things. The entity revealed secrets about people present that Anna could not possibly have known. Described sins confessed by Father Riesinger to his own confessor, protected by absolute seal. Named every priest in the Dubuque diocese who was living in a state of mortal sin and specified their sins. Revealed that one of the Franciscan sisters present had been molested by her uncle as a child. Something the sister had never told anyone. Described in detail the death of Father Riesinger's mother, including her final words. Despite Anna never having met the woman, but what did the entity want? This is what Father Riesinger documented most carefully, and what disturbs me most deeply. The entity, or rather, multiple entities, as several identified themselves by name, did not primarily seek to destroy Anna. When Father Riesinger asked directly what they wanted, the response was recorded. "We want the truth known. This woman is not innocent. She carries sins that have never been confessed. Her father violated her from age 14 to 18. He raped her repeatedly. She hated him. She wished him dead. She prayed for him to die. and when he finally did die, she felt joy, and guilt for that joy consumed her. She invited us in to punish herself for feeling glad that her rapist father was dead. We want everyone to know, she is not a victim, she is an accomplice. She wanted us here, she deserves to suffer. Father Riesinger's notes indicate that he investigated these claims. Anna's father had indeed died in 1912, and parish records showed he had a reputation for cruelty. But there was no evidence of sexual abuse beyond the entity's claims, and Anna herself, when lucid, had no memory of any such abuse. Yet the entity insisted. Over and over, across dozens of sessions, it repeated the same narrative. Anna had been abused, had sinful thoughts about her abuser, had guilty relief at his death, and therefore deserved possession as punishment. The entity's goal became clear: to convince Anna, and everyone present, that she was being justly punished for having normal human reactions to abuse, to make the victim believe she deserved victimhood. Father Riesinger wrote in his private notes, which I was permitted to read, "The entity does not want Anna's death. It wants her to believe she is irredeemably sinful. It wants her to internalize the abuse as deserved. It wants to take trauma and twist it into proof of unworthiness. This is not possession for destruction. This is possession for corruption of the soul's understanding of itself. What does the devil want? To convince us that we deserve hell." The exorcism finally succeeded on December 23, 1928. Anna was freed. She lived another 13 years and died in 1941, reportedly at peace. But Father Riesinger never fully recovered. He performed few exorcisms after this case. In his final years, he reportedly told a fellow Capuchin, "I freed Anna's body, but the entity succeeded in another way. It made me see how easily trauma can be weaponized, how victims can be convinced they deserved their suffering. That understanding haunts me more than any demonic manifestation ever could." Father Farrell's notes, added 1963. I have now documented 8 cases across different time periods and locations. A pattern emerges. These entities do not simply torment, they reveal, they expose. They use truth, or twisted versions of truth, as their primary weapon. The Maryland boy's entity wanted to create doubt in the exorcists. Anna Eklund's entity wanted to make a trauma victim believe she deserved her trauma. What connects them is this: the goal is not destruction of the body, but corruption of understanding. Corruption of how we see ourselves, how we see God, how we see good and evil. I am beginning to suspect that physical possession is merely a means to an end. The real possession is psychological, spiritual. It continues long after the entity departs. I must continue this research. I must understand what these entities truly want, because I fear the answer is far more subtle and terrifying than simple destruction. I took a break after reading Anna Eklund's case. Went upstairs, found Rachel making tea in the kitchen. "Still reading those journals?" she asked. "Yeah, they're detailed." "Dean, you know they're probably fiction, right? Or at minimum, highly embellished accounts of mental illness." I nodded, but didn't argue. "How do you explain that the details matched historical records? That Father Riesinger's case was real and documented? That the Iowa exorcism actually happened?" "I'm just reading them academically," I said. "Historical curiosity." She studied my face, then kissed my cheek. "Just don't let them consume you, okay?" I promised I wouldn't, but I knew I was lying. Back in the basement, I opened to the next document. This one was different, older, a case from before Father Farrell's time that he'd researched extensively. Case documentation. File number 3, compiled by Father Paul Farrell. Date of compilation, November 1982. Original case, 1906, Natal, South Africa. Subject, Clara Germana Celisource, Vatican Archives, Restricted Access Section. During my 1982 consultation visit to the Vatican regarding an unrelated matter, I was granted access to the restricted archives containing documentation of unusual cases from the colonial mission period. The case of Clara Germana Cele is one of the most thoroughly documented possessions in church history, witnessed by over 170 people, yet it remains largely unknown outside clerical circles. What follows is my compilation from the official reports filed by the Natal Mission in 1906. The case of Clara Germana Cele. Clara was 16 years old, a student at St. Michael's Mission, a Catholic school for African girls in Natal, South Africa. By all accounts, she was devout, studious, and unremarkable until August 1906. On August 20th, 1906, Clara approached one of the missionary sisters and reportedly said, "I made a pact. I shouldn't have, but I did. And now I can't make it stop." When pressed, Clara claimed she had made a pact with the devil during evening prayers 3 nights earlier. She wouldn't specify what she'd asked for, only that he accepted, and now he won't leave. The manifestations began that night, witnessed by 170 people. What makes this case remarkable is the sheer number of witnesses: students, teachers, missionaries, visiting church officials, local doctors, all testified to the same phenomena. Clara would levitate during prayer services, not hovering inches off the ground, but rising 5 feet into the air, horizontally, and remaining suspended for up to 10 minutes. This occurred in the mission chapel with the entire student body present. 170 girls and 7 sisters. Photographs were taken. I have seen copies in the Vatican archives. They are grainy, taken with 1906 technology, but they clearly show a figure suspended in the air above the mission floor. The church has never released these photographs publicly. Clara spoke in languages she had never studied. The missionary sisters documented her speaking fluent French, German, and Polish. But more disturbing was what one visiting linguist from Durban documented. Clara spoke in a language he later identified as a Zulu dialect that had been extinct for over 300 years. She demonstrated knowledge of private matters. During one episode, she revealed to the Mother Superior that one of the sisters, Sister Gabrielle, was secretly doubting her vocation and planning to leave the order. Sister Gabrielle had told no one, but she confirmed that yes, she had been planning to leave, and had written a letter to her family that she had not yet sent, hidden in her private quarters. Clara revealed that another sister had stolen food from the mission kitchen to give to her impoverished family. This was true. The sister confessed after Clara's revelation. But what did the entity want? Father Erasmus Herner and Father Mansuetus were called to perform the exorcism in September 1906. Their documentation is precise. When asked what it wanted, the entity responded, speaking through Clara in perfect Latin, "I want to prove that no place is holy, no person is safe. Even here, in your mission, in your chapel, surrounded by your prayers and your blessed objects, I can reach her. I can touch her. I can use her. You think you've created a sanctuary. You think these girls are protected by your God. I am here to demonstrate that protection is an illusion. This girl invited me in with a single moment of doubt. One prayer where she asked for something selfish. One instant where she wanted something more than she wanted your God. That's all it took. I don't need to destroy her. I don't even need to stay. I just need to prove that I can enter anywhere, possess anyone, at any time. That's my victory. Not her death. Her existence as proof that nowhere is safe." The exorcism lasted 2 days, September 10th, 12th, 1906. Multiple times Clara would cry out in her own voice, begging the priests to stop, saying it hurt too much. But the entity would respond through her. "She invited me. She must endure the consequence of invitation." On September 12th, after 48 hours of continuous prayer and ritual, the entity departed. According to the mission records, Clara screamed once, then collapsed. When she woke, she had no memory of anything after August 20th. Clara lived a normal life after the exorcism. She became a teacher, married, had children, died in 1962 at age 72. By all accounts, she never experienced another supernatural episode, but the mission was changed forever. Enrollment dropped by half within a year. Parents withdrew their daughters. The sisters reported that the chapel never felt the same, always slightly colder, slightly darker, even in bright sunlight. Father Herner's final report to the Vatican, 1906. The entity achieved its objective before we ever began the exorcism. It demonstrated that possession could occur in the holiest of places, to the most devout of children, witnessed by an entire community. It created fear where there had been faith, doubt where there had been certainty, questions where there had been answers. We freed Clara's body, but we could not restore what the entity had taken from the community. the belief that they were safe in God's house. The entity was correct. It did not need to remain. It had already won. Father Farrell's notes, added 1982. I have now studied 19 cases in detail. The pattern is undeniable. These entities, demons, evil spirits, whatever terminology we use, they do not operate as medieval theology suggested. They are not mindless forces of destruction. They are strategic, purposeful, goal-oriented. What do they want? 1. To create doubt in the faithful. 2. To weaponize truth and trauma. 3. To demonstrate that no place is safe, no person is protected. 4. To corrupt not through destruction, but through revelation and exposure. The Maryland entity wanted Father Bishop to doubt his faith forever. Anna Eklund's entity wanted to convince a rape victim that she deserved her suffering. Clara Seeley's entity wanted to prove that even in a mission chapel, surrounded by prayer, evil could reach anyone. They are not trying to win through force. They are trying to win through erosion, through psychological and spiritual warfare that continues long after the exorcism ends. And I fear they are succeeding. I have been an exorcist for 19 years. I have performed 23 formal exorcisms. And in every single case, I have doubted, questioned, wondered if what I was seeing was real, or if I was participating in religious theater that harmed people with mental illness. That doubt is exactly what they want. I am beginning to understand. I may not be fighting demons. I may be exactly where the demons want me, questioning, uncertain, unable to act with complete conviction. That thought terrifies me more than any possession I have ever witnessed. I set down the pages and looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. I'd been reading for over 3 hours. The mahogany box still contained 38 more pages. Cases from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, building toward something. The final entry was dated February 28, 2019, 16 days before Father Farrell died. I picked up the silver medallion from my desk, held it in my palm, felt its weight. Father Farrell had carried this through 63 cases documented in these pages, carried it while doubting, carried it while questioning everything, and still he continued. For 40 years, he continued. I needed to know how it ended, needed to know what that final case was, the one he documented just before his death. But tonight, I was exhausted. My eyes burned, my head ached. I would read more tomorrow, and the day after, until I understood what Father Paul Farrell had spent his life fighting, and what it had cost him. The next night, I returned to the basement with coffee and a notebook. I'd spent the day researching what I could verify, and everything checked out. Roland Doe was real. Anna Eklund was real. Clara Germana Selle was documented in mission records. Father Paul Farrell hadn't invented these cases. He'd compiled them. But why? What was he trying to understand? I opened the box and pulled out the next section. These pages were from the 1970s and 80s, and Father Farrell's handwriting in the margins showed increasing urgency. Case documentation, file Zachshire 23, compiled by Father Paul Farrell. Date of compilation, January 1982. Original case, September 1975, July 1976, Würzburg, West Germany. Subject, Annalisa Michel. Source, Vatican Archives, sealed. Diocese of Würzburg. Records, court documents. I was not present for this case, but it has haunted me since I first learned of it. In 1982, I was granted access to the sealed Vatican documentation, 67 audio recordings, medical reports, testimony from over 40 witnesses, and the photographs that were never released to the public. This is the most thoroughly documented possession case in modern history. It is also the most tragic. What follows is my compilation of what the entities wanted, and what they achieved. The case of Annalisa Michel. Annalisa Michel was born March 21, 1952, in Liebelfing, Bavaria, to a devout Catholic family. By all accounts, she was pious, studious, planning to become a teacher. She attended daily mass, prayed the rosary regularly, and was considered a model of faith by those who knew her. In 1968, at age 16, she suffered her first seizure. Diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, medications were prescribed. For 5 years, medical treatment controlled her condition. Then, in 1973, everything changed. Annalisa began seeing demonic faces during prayer. She heard voices commanding her to perform acts contrary to her faith. She developed violent aversions to religious objects. Crucifixes burned her hands. Holy water caused her skin to blister. Blessed images made her scream in agony. Medical intervention escalated. Psychiatric evaluation suggested psychosis. Multiple medications were tried. Nothing helped. Her condition deteriorated rapidly. By 1975, her parents, desperate and devout, petitioned the Bishop of Würzburg for permission to perform an exorcism. After extensive deliberation, permission was granted. Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt were assigned as exorcists. The first session began September 24, 1975. The last session occurred on June 30, 1976. 67 exorcism sessions over 10 months. Annalisa Michel died July 1, 1976. She weighed 30 kilograms, 68 pounds. Cause of death: malnutrition and dehydration. The audio recordings. I have listened to 43 hours of the recorded sessions. What I heard cannot be explained by any medical or psychological framework I know. Annalisa's voice, or rather the voices speaking through her, were distinct and multiple. Not overlapping or confused, but separate entities speaking simultaneously. Witnesses described hearing up to 6 different voices at once, each maintaining independent conversations with different people in the room. The entities identified themselves. Judas Iscariot, spoke in mixture of Aramaic phrases and German. Claimed to be damned for betraying Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Demanded that Annalisa betray her family publicly, reveal their secrets, destroy their reputation, complete the cycle of betrayal. When Father Renz asked what he wanted, this entity responded, "I want her to understand that loyalty is worthless, that everyone betrays everyone eventually, that her faith in her family is as misplaced as the disciples' faith in each other. I want her to become what I am, proof that devotion ends in betrayal." Nero, spoke in corrupted Latin mixed with German, referenced the burning of Rome, the persecution of Christians, demanded that Annalisa harm herself, burn herself, cut herself, as purification through suffering, art through destruction. This entity stated its goal clearly: I want to prove that suffering has no meaning, that martyrdom is just pain without purpose. She thinks her suffering brings her closer to Christ. I want her to suffer so much that she curses Christ. That's my victory. Not her death, but her curse. Adolf Hitler, spoke in harsh, commanding German, claimed to be burning in hell for his crimes against humanity, demanded that Annalisa spread hatred, attack Jewish people, prove that God creates monsters and then punishes them for being what he made them. Father Alt's notes record this entity saying, "I want her to hate. I want her pure Catholic family to see their devout daughter become what they most despise. I want to demonstrate that evil doesn't corrupt from outside, it emerges from within. She has the capacity for hatred inside her. I'm just giving it permission." Cain, the oldest voice, spoke in a language that linguists examining the recordings couldn't fully identify. Possibly Proto-Semitic, possibly something older. Claimed to be the first murderer, damned for killing Abel. Demanded that Annalisa harm her siblings. When asked why, this entity responded, translated from the ancient language by a Vatican specialist: "I want to prove that family is the first betrayal. That brother murders brother not from evil, but from the structure of family itself. Jealousy, comparison, competition for love, these are built into siblinghood. I didn't invent murder. God did when he created brothers." Lucifer, spoke in perfect ecclesiastical Latin, engaged in theological debates with the priests. Quoted scripture, Augustine, Aquinas. Argued against God's existence, mercy, and justice with sophisticated philosophical reasoning. This entity's goal was the most explicit. I want to destroy her faith through logic. I want her to understand that an all-powerful, all-loving God would never permit this suffering. Either he cannot stop me, which means he's not all-powerful, or he will not stop me, which means he's not all-loving. Either way, he's not worth worshipping. I don't need to kill her. I just need her to stop believing. That's damnation enough. Father Wilhelm Fleischmann, a damned priest from 1634, spoke in medieval German dialect, begged for absolution, claimed God had refused him mercy for his sins. This entity revealed detailed knowledge of a priest who had existed in the Würzburg region during the 30 Years' War. Church records, sealed and inaccessible to the public, confirmed that Father Wilhelm Fleischmann was hanged in 1634 for corruption and abuse of his position. This entity's goal: I want her to see that priests fail, that the church fails, that confession doesn't save, prayer doesn't protect, faith doesn't guarantee mercy. I served God for 30 years, and when I sinned, he damned me. If he damned me, he'll damn anyone, including her. The physical manifestations. Medical doctors present documented phenomena that defied explanation. Annalisa performed up to 600 genuflections per day, continuing even after both kneecaps fractured. Medical examination confirmed bilateral patellar fractures, yet she continued to walk and kneel on shattered bones. She consumed insects, spiders, flies, beetles, and drank her own urine, claiming the entities forced her to do so as penance. During violent episodes, 4 adult men could not restrain her 45-kilogram frame. Witnesses described inhuman strength. Room temperatures dropped during sessions. Multiple thermometers recorded drops of 15–20 degrees Celsius within minutes. Witnesses reported smells of sulfur, burning flesh, and decomposition emanating from Annalisa's body during manifestations. But the most disturbing aspect was the knowledge. The entities revealed information Annalisa could not possibly possess. Named priests in the Würzburg diocese who were living in mortal sin, specifying their exact transgressions, described secret meetings of church officials, quoting conversations word for word, revealed that Father Renz had been struggling with alcoholism, drinking sacramental wine alone in the rectory. Told Father Alt about a confession he had heard 3 weeks earlier, something protected by absolute seal. After Annalisa's death, the diocese quietly investigated these revelations. Multiple allegations were confirmed, priests were transferred, cover-ups were exposed. The entities had used Annalise as a megaphone for truth that the church wanted buried. What did they want? Father Renz's final report to the Vatican, which I read in the sealed archives, contained this assessment. These entities did not seek merely to destroy Annalise Michel. They sought to destroy her faith through suffering that seemed to have no divine purpose, expose corruption within the church, to undermine the institution, create doubt in the exorcists about God's mercy and power, demonstrate that possession could occur even in the most devout, prove that exorcism itself could fail, that sometimes God does not intervene. They succeeded on all counts. Annalisa is dead. The church was humiliated internationally. Father Alt left the priesthood. I continue, but I am broken. The entities won, not through possession alone, but through what the possession revealed about faith, institutions, and God's apparent absence in moments of greatest need. The trial. Annalise's parents and the 2 priests were prosecuted for negligent homicide. The trial became international news. The prosecution argued mental illness exacerbated by religious delusion. The defense argued genuine possession requiring spiritual intervention. The court sided with medicine. All 4 defendants were found guilty. 6 months suspended sentence. The church was globally humiliated. Exorcism was mocked as medieval superstition. Faith was questioned, which was exactly what the entities wanted. Father Farrell's notes, added January 1982. I have now studied 31 cases in depth. Annalisa Michel's case confirms the pattern I've been documenting for 19 years. These entities are not trying to win through force. They are trying to win through erosion. Erosion of faith makes suffering seem purposeless. Erosion of institutions, expose corruption to undermine trust. Erosion of certainty, create doubt in those who fight them. Erosion of meaning, demonstrate that devotion doesn't guarantee protection. They don't need to destroy everyone. They just need to destroy enough people publicly to make everyone else doubt. Annalisa Michel died weighing 68 pounds, having suffered for 10 months while priests prayed over her. The world watched. The world asked, where was God? That question is the entity's victory. I am beginning to understand something terrifying. These entities are not opposed to truth. They use truth as a weapon. They revealed real corruption in the church. They exposed real sins. They showed real failures, but they twisted the context. made it seem like proof that God is absent, that faith is futile, that devotion leads only to suffering. The most effective lies are truths presented without context. And I fear they are winning. I had to stop reading, set the pages down, stand up, pace the basement. The overhead light suddenly felt too bright, the shadows too dark. Annalisa Michel was a real person. She really died. There are photographs of her in the final weeks, skeletal, destroyed. The audio recordings exist, the trial transcripts are public record. And Father Farrell had access to the sealed Vatican documentation, the parts that were never released, the parts that detailed exactly what the entities said they wanted. I poured water from the bottle I'd brought, drank it, poured more. My hands were shaking slightly. The next document in the box was thicker, more recent. Case documentation. File number 47 compiled by Father Paul Farrell. Date of compilation, January 2004. Original case, October, December 2003, San Diego, California. Subject. Name redacted. Military records sealed. Source. U.S. Military Archdiocese, Navy Chaplain Corps, reports. This case came to my attention through official military channels. Father Terrence McGowan, Navy chaplain, documented it thoroughly and requested my consultation. What follows is based on his reports, medical documentation, and intelligence verification. The case of the Fallujah veteran. The subject was a Marine sergeant, 28 years old, 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Decorated, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. Clean psychological evaluations through September 2003. He returned from Fallujah in early October 2003. Standard decompression, no immediate issues. But on October 15, 2003, he experienced his first episode. The episodes. During these states, the subject would speak fluent Arabic despite having only basic operational vocabulary. Provide detailed tactical intelligence about insurgent positions in Iraq. Describe specific combat operations he had not participated in. Reveal classified information he had no clearance to access. Naval intelligence was notified. They interviewed the subject. What they discovered was extraordinary and disturbing. Verified intelligence. The subject, during episodes, provided information that was 97% accurate regarding insurgent positions in Fallujah. Detailed descriptions of operations he never participated in. Names of Iraqi civilians killed in specific incidents. Locations of weapons caches that were subsequently raided and found exactly where described. Navy intelligence verified everything they could. All of it was accurate. All of it was classified secret or higher. The subject should not have possessed this information. Father McGowan's observations. Father McGowan was granted permission to observe the subject during episodes. His documentation is clinical and disturbing. First observation, November 12, 2003. Subject entered episode state at 14:35. Remained conscious, but unable to control speech or actions. Posture changed, became rigid, militaristic in an unfamiliar way. Began speaking in Arabic. Navy linguist translated, "The house on the corner of Al-Hadra and Al-Furqan. 3 fighters. 2 AK-47s, 1 RPG. They killed the Marine with the radio, shot him in the throat. He was 19 years old. His name was Corporal James Patrick Morrison. He bled out calling for his mother. His last words were, 'Mom, I'm sorry.' He died at 11:47 local time on November 8, 2004. Subject then physically reenacted combat, taking cover, returning fire, throwing imaginary grenades. When episode ended, subject had no memory. When informed what he'd said, subject broke down. I wasn't in that sector. I've never been to those streets. I don't know anyone named Morrison. How do I know this? How do I know he called for his mother?" Naval intelligence later confirmed. Corporal James Patrick Morrison, USMC, KIA, November 8, 2004, Fallujah, Iraq. Shot in throat during house-to-house fighting. Age 19. The subject had described a Marine's death before it happened. Morrison was still alive when the subject had this episode. What did the entity want? Father McGowan documented multiple episodes. The pattern became clear. Each episode revealed Civilian casualties that were officially categorized as collateral damage. Specific children killed in operations. Incidents of potential war crimes that were never investigated. Names, faces, final moments of Iraqis who died. The entity explained its goal directly. Father McGowan's transcript, November 28, 2003. I want him to know what he's part of, what his brothers did, what his country does in the name of freedom. He thinks he served honorably. I'm showing him the cost, the real cost. Every child killed, every family destroyed, every civilian who died so Marines could feel safe. I'm making him carry the weight of all of it. He didn't pull these specific triggers, but he wore the uniform. He served the same mission. He's complicit, and I want him to know it, to feel it, to carry it forever. The intelligence dilemma. Naval intelligence wanted to continue the episodes. The information was tactically valuable. Lives could be saved with what the entity revealed about insurgent positions. They pressured Father McGowan to delay the exorcism. Father McGowan refused. His report to the military archdiocese stated, "The entity is providing accurate intelligence, yes. But at what cost? It is destroying this Marine from the inside, showing him things designed to make him feel guilt for actions he did not personally commit, creating a burden of complicity that will crush him." Naval intelligence argues that the information saves lives. But whose lives? And at what spiritual cost to this Marine's soul? I cannot participate in the exploitation of possession for tactical gain. That crosses a line I will not cross. The exorcism. Father McGowan performed the exorcism in December 2003. It required 11 sessions over 3 weeks. The entity fought. During the final session, the entity made its ultimate goal clear. You can drive me out, priest, but you cannot remove what I showed him. He knows now. He knows what his service cost. He knows the children's names. He knows their faces. He knows their last words. I don't need to stay in his body. I've already won. The knowledge I gave him, that's possession enough. He'll carry it forever. Truth is heavier than demons. The entity departed December 23, 2003. The Marine was declared free. Father McGowan's final report, dated December 30, 2003. The exorcism was successful. The entity is gone. The Marine is free from possession. But he is not free from what the entity showed him. He carries knowledge that is destroying him. Names of children, faces of civilians, details of incidents that haunt him. I freed his body. I could not free his mind. Addendum. Added by Father Farrell, January 2004. Father McGowan contacted me on January 2, 2004. The Marine had taken his own life on December 31, 2003. Single gunshot. Left a note. Thank you, Father, for freeing me from the demon. But I can't be freed from what it showed me. Some truths are too heavy to carry. I'm sorry. The entity succeeded, not through permanent possession, not through physical destruction, but through revelation, through showing a good man the costs of actions he was part of, even tangentially, through weaponizing truth and guilt. The Marine served honorably. He followed orders. He protected his brothers. But the entity made him carry the weight of every consequence, every civilian death, every child killed in the broader conflict. And that weight was unbearable. This is what demons want. Not our bodies, but our consciences. Not our deaths, but our despair. Not our damnation through sin, but our destruction through knowledge we cannot process. The Marine is dead. The entity achieved its goal. And I am beginning to understand. We are not fighting a battle we can win through ritual and prayer alone. We are fighting a battle for the human capacity to bear truth. And I fear that capacity has limits. I set the pages down and sat in silence for a long time. The mahogany box still held more pages, more cases, building toward the final entry from February 2019. But I needed to stop, needed to process. Father Farrell had documented a pattern across decades, entities that weaponized truth, that used knowledge, revelation, and exposure as tools of destruction more effective than any physical torture. Roland Doe's demon wanted to create permanent doubt. Anna Eklund's demons wanted to make a victim believe she deserved her abuse. Clara Seeley's demon wanted to prove nowhere was safe. Annalise Michel's demons wanted to destroy faith through suffering and expose institutional corruption. The Marine's demon wanted to weaponize guilt and complicity. Each one won. Not through possession alone, but through what the possession revealed. I picked up the medallion from my desk. Saint Michael the Archangel, standing on the serpent, quis ut Deus, who is like God. Father Farrell had carried this for 40 years, through 63 cases, through all this knowledge of how entities win not through force, but through erosion. And he'd kept going, kept documenting, kept fighting, until 16 days before his death, when he wrote one final entry. I would read it tomorrow night. But tonight, I just sat there in my basement, holding a dead priest's medallion, understanding why he might have died with doubt in his heart. Because if demons win by making us question, by showing us unbearable truths, by weaponizing knowledge itself, then how do you fight that? How do you have faith when faith itself is the target? I didn't know. Father Farrell didn't know. And maybe that uncertainty was exactly what the demons wanted. I didn't return to the basement for 2 days, Rachel noticed. You stopped reading the journals, she said over breakfast on the second day. Yeah, needed a break. Good. She squeezed my hand. I was getting worried. I nodded, but we both knew I wasn't done. The mahogany box sat in the basement with one final document still unread. The entry dated February 28, 2019. 16 days before Father Paul Farrell died. I'd been avoiding it, because I knew somehow that it would be different from the others. On the third night, I went back down. Case documentation. File, 163. Primary investigator, Father Paul Farrell. Date, February 28, 2019. Location, Providence, Rhode Island. Subject, Sarah Hoff, age 19. This will be my final entry. Not because I am ill, though my heart grows weaker each day, but because this case has answered the question I have spent 40 years asking. What do demons really want? I know now, and the answer has broken something in me that cannot be repaired. The case of Sarah Hoff. Sarah came to me on February 3, 2019. She walked into St. Sebastian's Cathedral and asked specifically for me by name. How did you know to ask for me? I said. I didn't know, she replied. Something told me to come here and ask for Father Farrell. I don't know why. That was the first sign. Sarah Hoff, 19 years old, philosophy major at Brown University. By all outward appearances, healthy, intelligent, normal. But she sat in my office and told me she'd been hearing a voice for 6 months. Not voices, plural, she clarified. One voice, always the same voice. It knows things I don't know. It shows me things I shouldn't be able to see. What kind of things? The future, people's secrets. 3 days before my roommate got the call about her father's death, the voice told me it would happen. 2 hours before the fire alarm went off in my building due to a gas leak, the voice warned me to get out. It tells me things about people when I look at them. Affairs, crimes, lies they've told. And you believe this voice is external? Not anxiety or intuition? I've been in therapy for 4 months. I'm on 3 different medications. Nothing touches it. She looked at me with exhausted eyes. Yesterday, the voice told me something about you. My chest tightened. What did it say? It said you've spent 40 years fighting demons, and you've never been certain they're real. It said you carry doubts that consume you. It said your mother died alone while you were too busy to call her, and you blame yourself. It said you've documented 62 cases, and in every single one, you've wondered if you were just performing religious theater for mentally ill people. I sat very still. Those thoughts, those exact thoughts, I had never spoken aloud to anyone. Not in confession, not in my private journals, not even in prayer. When did the voice start? I asked carefully. After my grandmother died. She was Chinese Buddhist. She had these old practices, rituals. She made me promise to bury certain objects with her. Protective amulets, prayer papers. The funeral home wouldn't allow it. 3 days after we buried her without them, the voice started. I agreed to observe her. Not formal exorcism yet, just assessment. The sessions. Over 3 weeks, I met with Sarah 6 times. The manifestations were unlike anything in my previous 62 cases. No levitation, no speaking in tongues, no violent outbursts, no physical phenomena at all. Just knowledge. Impossible knowledge. Sarah, or the entity using her, knew things she could not possibly know. She described the room where the Maryland exorcism of 1949 took place. Perfect details. The color of the wallpaper, the crack in the ceiling. Details I had never written down, only remembered. She quoted from my 1982 report on Annalisa Michel, a report I hand-delivered to the Vatican and never kept copies of. Word for word. She knew about cases I had never documented, the ones the church paid to bury, the ones that never made it into my files. During our 5th session, I asked the entity directly, "What do you want?" Sarah's voice changed. Not dramatically, just enough that I knew I wasn't speaking to her anymore. "To ask you a question, Paul." "What question?" "In 40 years, across 63 cases, have you ever been absolutely certain, not hopeful, not faithful, but certain, that you were fighting something real?" I didn't answer immediately. The entity continued. "The boy in Maryland could have been schizophrenia with unusual manifestations. Anna Eklund, severe dissociative identity disorder from childhood trauma. Clara Germana Selle, mass hysteria in an isolated religious community. Annalise Michel, temporal lobe epilepsy combined with religious psychosis. The Marine, severe PTSD with dissociative episodes." "You can't explain everything," I said. "I don't need to explain everything. I just need to create reasonable doubt. Medical science can't explain 100% of cases, so there's always room for supernatural interpretation. But it also can't disprove natural explanations, so there's always room for skepticism." "What is your point?" "My point is that you've spent 40 years in the space between proof and faith, and that space has destroyed you. Because here you are, 76 years old, after a lifetime of service, and you still don't know if we're real." "I have faith." "Faith isn't certainty. Faith is hoping you're right. I'm asking, are you certain?" The question hung in the air. The entity waited. Sarah sat there, looking at me with eyes that weren't entirely her own. And I realized I had to answer honestly. After 40 years, I owed at least that much. "No," I said quietly. "I am not certain." The entity smiled with Sarah's mouth. "Thank you for your honesty. That's all I wanted. For you to admit it." "Admit what?" "That we've won. Not through possessing everyone. Not through destroying everything. But through creating doubt. Through making even the most faithful, most experienced exorcist in this diocese uncertain about what he spent his life fighting. If you've already won, why are you here? To make sure you understand what we really want. You've been documenting it for 40 years, Paul. You've seen the pattern, but you haven't accepted the conclusion. Tell me then, what do you want?" The entity's answer. What follows is a direct transcription of what the entity said. I recorded it, though I have not shared the recording with anyone. "We don't want your world. Earth is yours, flawed, broken, beautiful in its way. Beautiful. We don't want your souls in the way your theology suggests. Possession isn't about collecting souls like trophies. What we want is simpler and more terrible. We want you to doubt. Doubt your God. Doubt your purpose. Doubt your goodness. Doubt that suffering has meaning. Doubt that sacrifice matters. Doubt that love is real. Doubt that faith protects anyone from anything. We want you to see the truth. That innocent children die in agony while priests pray uselessly over them. That devoted women starve to death during exorcisms. That good men carry guilt for wars they didn't start. That victims blame themselves for abuse they didn't cause. That nowhere is safe, no one is protected, and faith guarantees nothing. We want you to see all of this and still be expected to believe in an all-powerful, all-loving God. We want you to hold those two realities simultaneously until the contradiction breaks you. That's what we want, Paul, not your damnation, not your doubt. Because a human who doubts is more useful to us than a human who is damned. The damned are done, their story is over. But the doubting, They keep going, keep serving, keep praying, keep pretending, all while carrying the poison we planted. You are more valuable to us as a doubting priest than as a possessed one. You've spent 40 years showing people that even exorcists aren't certain. Even the faithful struggle. Even the devoted question. That's our victory, not possession. Erosion. And we've won, Paul. Look at you. 76 years old. 40 years of service. And you just admitted you're not certain any of this is real. We didn't need to possess you. We just needed to make you witness enough suffering, enough failure, enough ambiguity that certainty became impossible. And it worked. The exorcism. I performed the exorcism ritual on Sarah immediately after this conversation. It took 4 hours. The entity offered no resistance. When it was over, Sarah blinked and looked at me, confused. What happened? Did I zone out? She had no memory of anything the entity had said. I told her she was free. She thanked me and left. I sat in my office for 6 hours afterward. My final reflection. The entity was right. I'm not certain. I have never been certain. Not in 1949 when Father Bishop first shared the Maryland case with me. Not in 1963 when I became an exorcist. Not in 1982 when I reviewed the Annalise Michel documentation. Not in 2003 when the Marine took his life. Not now. I have faith. I have hope. I have dedication to service. But certainty? No. And that doubt, that fundamental uncertainty about whether I've spent 40 years fighting real demons or performing elaborate rituals for mentally ill people, that doubt is exactly what the entities wanted to create. They didn't need to possess me. They just needed to show me enough cases where faith didn't protect, prayer didn't save, and exorcism came too late. They needed to show me that doubt is the real possession. I will die with this uncertainty. I will stand before God, if God exists, and I will not know if I served him faithfully or wasted my life on religious theater. That not knowing is the hell I carry. And the entities were correct. I am more useful to them this way, because every person I've helped, every exorcism I've performed, I did while doubting, while uncertain, while questioning. And if even I doubt, how can I ask others to have certainty? The entities have won, not through force, through erosion, and I cannot undo it. Final entry, February 28, 2019. To whoever finds these documents, I have compiled 63 cases over 40 years. I have tried to understand what demons really want, and now I know. They want us to doubt ourselves, our faith, our purpose. They want to show us suffering that seems meaningless and expect us to still believe in meaning. They want us to witness failure and still have faith in success. They want us to carry unbearable knowledge and still function. They don't need to possess everyone. They just need to break enough people publicly that everyone else questions privately. I don't know if I fought real demons or shadows. I don't know if I saved souls or performed religious theater. I don't know if God heard any of my prayers or if I prayed into silence. I only know that I tried. For 40 years I tried. And I hope that was enough. Even though I doubt it. Father Paul Farrell. February 28, 2019. Father Paul Farrell died in his sleep on March 14, 2019, 16 days after writing this entry. I set down the pages and sat in silence for a long time. The basement felt different now, not haunted, just heavy with the weight of one man's lifetime of uncertainty. I picked up the medallion, St. Michael the Archangel, Quisut Deus, who is like God. Father Farrell had carried this for 40 years, through 63 cases, through all his doubt, through all his questions, and he never stopped, even when he wasn't certain, even when he questioned everything. He kept going, kept serving, kept trying to help people. Maybe that was the real answer. Maybe faith isn't certainty. Maybe faith is serving even when you doubt. Maybe faith is continuing even when you question. Maybe faith is trying to help people even when you're not sure if you're helping at all. Father Farrell died doubting. But he also died serving. And maybe that was enough. 3 days later, I put the journals back in the mahogany box. All 63 cases. All the documentation of what demons really want. Rachel asked if I was going to write about them, publish them, turn them into an academic paper. No, I said. They're not mine to share. Then what will you do with them? Return something that belongs with Father Farrell. Cite Sebastian's Cemetery, March 31st, 2019. The cemetery was quiet on a Tuesday morning. Overcast sky, light wind, the smell of early spring in the air. I found Father Paul Farrell's grave in the older section. Simple headstone, gray granite. Father Paul Farrell, April 12th, 1943, March 14th, 2019. Faithful servant. No mention of the 63 cases. No mention of 40 years as an exorcist. No mention of the weight he carried. Just, faithful servant. I knelt on the grass and took the medallion from around my neck. I'd worn it for 3 weeks while reading the journals. I wasn't sure why. Protection, maybe. Or connection to something larger than myself. I held the silver disc in my palm. St. Michael standing on the serpent. The symbols on the back that I still didn't understand. Father Farrell, I said quietly, speaking to the stone. I read everything. All 63 cases. All your documentation. Everything you spent 40 years trying to understand. A robin landed on a nearby gravestone, watched me, flew away. I don't know if you were right. I don't know if those entities were real, or if they were manifestations of trauma and mental illness. I don't know if you saved souls, or if you were part of a system that prevented people from getting proper psychiatric care. The wind picked up slightly, made the trees rustle. But I know this. You tried. For 40 years you tried. You documented everything because you thought it mattered. You carried weight that no one else could carry because you thought someone needed to carry it. You served even when you doubted. You kept going even when you weren't certain. I placed the medallion on the grave, let it rest on the stone above his name. You wrote that you hoped it was enough, that you tried, and you hoped that trying was enough. The medallion caught the weak sunlight, seemed to glow for just a moment. I think it was enough, Father. I think trying, really trying, even with doubt, I think that's what faith actually is. Not certainty, not proof. Just continuing to serve even when you're not sure. Continuing to help even when you question. Continuing to believe even when you doubt. I stood up, brushed grass from my knees. Thank you for trying. Thank you for 40 years of service. Thank you for carrying weight that most people never even knew existed. Thank you for doubting and serving anyway. The cemetery was quiet. No dramatic signs. No supernatural confirmation. Just silence and stone and the medallion sitting on a grave. And that was okay. Because maybe that's how it actually works. Maybe there are no clear answers. Maybe faith really is just choosing to serve despite uncertainty. Maybe demons win by making us think we need certainty before we can act. Maybe Father Farrell was faithful precisely because he served while doubting. I started to walk away, then turned back. I don't know if you're at peace now, Father. I don't know if you got the answers you were looking for. But I hope you did. I hope you found certainty on the other side. I hope God told you that yes, you were fighting real demons. Yes, you saved real souls. Yes, it all mattered. The wind picked up again. The trees whispered. But even if he didn't, even if there are still no easy answers, I hope you know, you mattered. What you did mattered. The trying mattered. I left the medallion where it was and walked back to my car. Behind me, St. Sebastian's Cemetery held its secrets. Held Father Paul Farrell and the weight he'd carried. Held thousands of other stories that would never be fully known. And that was okay, because some stories aren't meant to be solved. Some questions aren't meant to be answered. Some mysteries are meant to be carried. And some people carry them faithfully, even while doubting. The mahogany box sits in my office at Brown now, not hidden, just filed away with other research materials. Rachel asked me once more if I believed the journals were real. I believe Father Farrell believed they were real, I said. And I believe he spent 40 years trying to help people. That's real enough. She accepted that answer. I think about the journals sometimes, about what demons really want, about doubt as possession, about erosion as victory. And I think Father Farrell was onto something. Maybe the real battle isn't between good and evil in some cosmic sense. Maybe the real battle is between certainty and doubt. Between giving up and continuing. Between letting questions destroy you and letting questions motivate you. Father Farrell chose to continue. For 40 years, despite doubt, despite uncertainty, despite questioning everything. And maybe that choice to serve despite not knowing, maybe that's what actually defeats demons. Not exorcism, not ritual, not certainty. Just choosing to keep trying, keep serving, keep helping, even when you're not sure if it matters. Even when you doubt, especially when you doubt. I don't know if demons are real. I don't know if Father Farrell fought actual supernatural entities or complex psychological phenomena that we don't fully understand yet. But I know he tried, and I know that trying, really, genuinely trying to help people even when you're uncertain. I know that matters. That's real. That's enough. And maybe that's all faith ever was.